Captain Jake Martinez had seen a lot of weird stuff in his 15 years of deep space exploration, but nothing quite prepared him for the sight of Ambassador Krell Knox dragging what looked like a cross between a velociraptor and a giant octopus into the diplomatic meeting room. "Greetings, humans of the vessel Wanderlust," Krell Knox announced, his forearms gesturing dramatically while his reptilian features attempted what might have been a smile. "I present to you the sacred dread beast of Veltar, the apex predator of our homeworld and the ultimate test of worthiness for any species seeking alliance with the mighty Veltari Empire." The creature in question was about the size of a small car, covered in what appeared to be armored scales that shifted between deep purple and black. Its tentacle-like appendages writhed menacingly, and its 3 heads each sported rows of razor-sharp teeth that glistened with some kind of acidic saliva. Multiple eyes tracked the human's movements with predatory intelligence. Jake scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Huh, that's actually pretty impressive. What's it taste like?" The silence that followed was so complete you could have heard a pin drop in the vacuum of space. Krell Knox's vertical pupils dilated in what was probably confusion, while his translator device made several concerning clicking sounds. "I'm sorry, Captain Martinez. Could you repeat that question? My translation matrix must be malfunctioning." "Oh, I was just wondering about the flavor profile," Jake explained helpfully. "You know, is it more like chicken or beef? Maybe seafood, given those tentacles." From across the room, Chef Rodriguez perked up like a bloodhound catching a scent. "Captain, with your permission, I'd like to examine this specimen more closely. Those muscle fibers look incredibly well developed, and I'm thinking a nice dry rub with some of that Centauri seasoning blend we picked up last month." Communications Officer Lisa Park nodded enthusiastically. "Oh, and we still have that bottle of Andromedan wine that pairs well with exotic proteins. This could be perfect for tonight's dinner service." Krell Knox's translator was now making sounds that could only be described as electronic whimpering. "What? This is not. The dread beast is not for consumption. It is the ultimate predator, the apex life form. The dinner special?" Engineer Murphy suggested, looking up from his tablet where he'd apparently been researching cooking methods. "I'm reading that creatures with this kind of exoskeleton respond really well to slow roasting. Maybe a nice marinade first, something acidic to break down those tough fibers." The ambassador's forearms began flailing in what Jake was beginning to recognize as the Veltari equivalent of a panic attack. "You cannot simply, it is sacred. It represents the pinnacle of evolutionary achievement. It has terrorized our people for millennia." "Terrorized?" Chef Rodriguez looked genuinely confused. "But it's just sitting there. Seems pretty docile to me." This was technically true. The dread beast had initially been thrashing around impressively, but now it was just sort of loafing. Occasionally one of its heads would yawn, displaying those supposedly terrifying teeth, but mostly it seemed bored by the whole proceedings. "It's probably just hungry," Jake observed. "Most predators are pretty chill when they're not actively hunting." "Rodriguez, you think we could whip up something special for our new friends here? Show them some human hospitality?" The gleam in Rodriguez's eyes was probably visible from orbit. "Captain, I've been waiting my entire career for a challenge like this. Give me 2 hours and I'll have this beauty ready for the finest dining experience this side of the galactic core." Krell Knox made a sound that was somewhere between a sob and a death rattle. "Please, honored humans, I believe there has been a grave misunderstanding. The dread beast is not meant to be prepared. It is meant to test your courage, your worthiness as potential allies. You are supposed to face it in combat to prove your species' strength." Jake looked at the creature again, then back at the ambassador. "Combat? With dinner? That seems kind of wasteful, don't you think?" "Wasteful." Krell Knox's voice cracked like a teenager hitting puberty. "This is the dread beast of Veltar. For 3,000 years, It has been the ultimate symbol of our warrior culture. Its image adorns our battle standards. Our greatest champions have died attempting to slay just one of these magnificent creatures. Dr. Emma Foster, the ship's xenobiologist, chose that moment to enter the room carrying her scanning equipment. She took one look at the dread beast and immediately began circling it like a shark. "Oh my, this is fascinating. Captain, look at this muscle density. And these tentacles have incredible flexibility. The protein content must be off the charts." "Protein content?" Krell Knox whispered, his scales shifting to what Jake was pretty sure was the Veiltari equivalent of pale. "Absolutely," Emma continued, running her scanner over the creature's hide. "And look at this marbling in the tissue. This is premium-grade meat, Captain. We're talking about a delicacy here." The dread beast, seemingly aware it was being discussed like a menu item, let out what might have been a growl but sounded more like a contented purr. One of its tentacles even reached out to gently pat Emma's hand. "See? It likes her," Lisa observed. "That's usually a good sign for flavor. Happy animals taste better." "Animals?" Krell Knox's voice had risen to a pitch that was probably causing dogs to howl on nearby planets. "This is not an animal. This is the apex predator. The ultimate life form. The evening's entertainment," Murphy interrupted, still scrolling through his tablet. "I'm reading about some interesting preparation methods here. Did you know that on Rigel VI they have a technique called plasma searing that locks in the juices while creating a nice crispy exterior?" Chef Rodriguez was now examining the creature with the intensity of a master craftsman studying a rare gem. "The real question is whether we go traditional barbecue or try something more fusion-oriented. I'm thinking maybe a nice herb crust, some of those Europan mushrooms we picked up last week." "Mushrooms," Krell Knox repeated faintly. "You want to serve our apex predator with mushrooms?" "Well, they're more of a side dish," Rodriguez explained patiently. "The real star of the show is obviously going to be the meat itself. I'm thinking we start with a nice appetizer, maybe some of those tentacles done tempura style, then move on to the main course." The ambassador's forearms were now moving in complex patterns that Jake recognized as either a religious blessing or a complete mental breakdown. Possibly both. "In our culture," Krell Knox said slowly, as if explaining to very small children, "the dread beast is not food. It is the ultimate test. Warriors spend years preparing to face one. Most do not survive the encounter. Those who do are elevated to legendary status." "Legendary status for fighting your dinner?" Jake looked genuinely puzzled. That seems like a lot of work when you could just, cook it properly. "It's not dinner," Krell Knox shrieked. "It's the apex predator." "Right," Jake nodded. "Apex predator. Got it. So what's the protocol here? Do we need to send invitations to the other delegations? This seems like the kind of meal you'd want to share." From the corner of the room, the dread beast made a sound that was remarkably similar to a chuckle. Even it seemed to be enjoying the show. "The protocol," Krell Knox said with the air of someone explaining the obvious, "is that your strongest warriors face the beast in single combat. If you prove worthy, we discuss alliance. If not," he made a cutting gesture across his throat. "Oh," said Emma, looking up from her scanner. "Well, that's unnecessarily complicated. Why not just skip to the alliance part and have dinner together? Much more civilized." "Civilized?" Krell Knox's scales were now cycling through colors that probably didn't exist in human perception. "You call consuming the apex predator civilized?" "Well, yeah," Jake said. "I mean, that's kind of what apex predators do, right? They eat other predators. It's like the whole point of being at the top of the food chain." The silence that followed this observation was so profound that Jake wondered if he'd accidentally broken the universal translator. Then Krell Knox made a sound that was part whimper, part sob, and part existential crisis. You consider yourselves apex predators. I mean, we're here, aren't we? Jake gestured around the room, flying around space, making friends, preparing exotic cuisine. Seems pretty apex to me. Rodriguez had apparently finished his preliminary examination and was now making notes on his tablet. Captain, I'm thinking we'll need about 3 hours prep time. This is going to be a proper feast, not just a quick meal. We'll want to do this right. 3 hours? Krell Knox's voice had gone from hysterical to barely audible. You need 3 hours to prepare to face the dread beast in combat? Combat? Rodriguez looked confused. No. 3 hours to cook it. Though I guess the prep work is kind of like combat if you think about it. You're battling against time, fighting to bring out the best flavors, conquering the ingredients. The ambassador's forearms went limp. I think I need to lie down. Despite Ambassador Krell Knox's increasingly frantic protests, the crew of the Wanderlust approached the preparation of their impromptu feast with the kind of enthusiastic professionalism that had made humanity the galaxy's most unexpectedly but successful explorers. Chef Rodriguez had commandeered the station's main kitchen, much to the horror of the VL-Tari delegation who had gathered to witness what they assumed would be an epic battle between human warriors and their sacred apex predator. Instead, they found themselves watching something far more disturbing, a human treating their most feared creature like ingredients for a cooking show. Now, the key to working with any apex predator, Rodriguez explained to his impromptu audience, is understanding the muscle structure. You see how these tentacles are primarily fast twitch fibers? That means they're going to be tender, but they'll cook quickly. We don't want to overdo it. Krell Knox, who had been forced to watch this culinary horror show by diplomatic protocol, made a sound like a tea kettle reaching its breaking point. That is not how you are supposed to interact with the dread beast. You are supposed to challenge it, to prove your worth as warriors. Oh, I am challenging it, Rodriguez said cheerfully, wielding his knife with the kind of casual competence that made the assembled aliens take several steps backward. I'm challenging it to taste absolutely incredible. Dr. Foster had set up her equipment nearby and was providing running commentary that somehow made everything worse. The bone structure is fascinating, really. You can see how it's evolved for maximum predatory efficiency. These claws are designed to rend flesh, these teeth can bite through steel, and yet the meat itself has this wonderful marbling that suggests a very active lifestyle. You're analyzing our apex predator like it's livestock, whispered one of the VL-Tari warriors, his scales turning. What Jake was learning was the color of nausea. Well, technically all meat is livestock from a certain perspective, Emma replied helpfully. The only difference is whether you're raising it yourself or hunting it in the wild. This is more like exotic game, really. Captain Martinez, meanwhile, was trying to maintain some semblance of diplomatic decorum while secretly being absolutely fascinated by the whole process. Ambassador Krell Knox, I want you to know that we're taking this very seriously. Rodriguez here is our finest chef. If anyone can do justice to your, apex predator, it's him. Do justice to it? Krell Knox's voice had gone completely flat. Captain Martinez, you are supposed to fight it with weapons. In single combat. To the death. Right, but see, that's where I think there might be a cultural misunderstanding, Jake said, patting the ambassador's shoulder in what he hoped was a comforting manner. Where we come from, the best way to honor a magnificent creature like this is to make sure nothing goes to waste. We're going to savor every bite. From the kitchen, Rodriguez called out, Captain, do you want me to save the heads for presentation? I'm thinking we could do a nice glaze, maybe some garnish. Really make it look spectacular. The heads? Krell Knox turned to stare at the chef. You want to serve the heads? Well, they're the most impressive part, aren't they? Waste not, want not, as my grandmother used to say. Plus, the cheek meat is usually the most tender. Engineer Murphy had been conspicuously absent for the last hour, but now he returned carrying several bottles and looking extremely pleased with himself. Captain, I managed to locate some excellent wine pairings. The station's sommelier recommended this vintage from the Proxima Centauri vineyards. Apparently it goes extremely well with aggressive predators. Aggressive predators? The sommelier in question, a tall, thin alien with blue skin and entirely too many eyes, nodded enthusiastically. Oh yes, the more dangerous the creature, the better this wine complements the meal. Something about the adrenaline in the meat, I believe. Krell Knox made a sound that was part sob, part laugh, and mostly hysteria. You have wine specifically designed to go with apex predators. We have wine specifically designed to go with everything, Murphy replied matter-of-factly. It's called having a properly stocked cellar. You should try it sometime. The kitchen timer chose that moment to chime, and Rodriguez emerged from the kitchen carrying what appeared to be a perfectly prepared appetizer. All right, everyone, first course is ready. We're starting with tempura-style tentacles with a spicy aioli dipping sauce. The platter he carried looked like something from a high-end restaurant. The tentacles had been sliced into perfect rings, battered and fried to a golden brown, and arranged artfully around a small bowl of sauce. It looked delicious. It also looked like the dismembered remains of the VL Tari's most sacred creature. Who wants to try the first bite? Rodriguez asked cheerfully. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of several Veltari warriors fainting. I'll try it, Jake said, reaching for a piece. Can't let good food go to waste. Captain, no, Krell Knox lunged forward, but it was too late. Jake had already taken a bite, chewed thoughtfully, and swallowed. Oh wow, he said, his eyes widening. That's actually incredible. The texture is perfect, and the flavor is like if calamari and chicken had a baby, but better. Rodriguez, you've outdone yourself. Thank you, Captain. The secret is in the batter. A little bit of that Andromedan spice blend we picked up last month really makes it pop. Emma took the next bite, followed by Murphy, then Lisa, and finally Rodriguez himself. The consensus was unanimous. The apex predator was delicious. This is impossible, Krell Knox whispered, watching the humans casually consume what amounted to his people's greatest nightmare. This cannot be happening. Oh, it's happening, Jake said, reaching for another piece. And if this is just the appetizer, I can't wait to see what the main course looks like. From the kitchen, a timer chimed again. Rodriguez smiled. Speaking of which, that should be the first roast finishing up. Time for the real show to begin. What happened next would be remembered in galactic history as either the most horrifying or most entertaining display of casual dominance ever witnessed by multiple species. Chef Rodriguez, apparently inspired by the growing audience of traumatized aliens, decided to turn the cooking process into an impromptu educational demonstration. All right, everyone gather around, Rodriguez announced, wheeling out a cart laden with cooking equipment. Today we're going to learn how to properly prepare apex predator using traditional human techniques combined with some modern innovations. The assembled delegates from various species edged closer with the kind of morbid fascination usually reserved for train wrecks or reality television. Ambassador Krell Knox, meanwhile, had given up all pretense of dignity and was simply staring at the proceedings with the hollow eyes of someone whose entire worldview had been fed through a meat grinder. Now, the first thing you need to understand about apex predators, Rodriguez continued, pulling the main roast from the oven, is that they require respect. Not the kind of respect where you're afraid to touch them, but the kind of respect where you make sure to bring out their best qualities. The roast was magnificent. Rodriguez had somehow managed to create a golden brown crust that glistened under the lights, while the aroma filling the room was so incredible that even the horrified aliens were unconsciously salivating. The three heads had been arranged artfully around the main body, glazed to perfection and garnished with what appeared to be edible flowers. The key to the flavor. Rodriguez explained, beginning to carve with the casual expertise of someone who'd been doing this for decades, is in the marinade. I used a combination of Terran herbs, some of that fermented Rigelian fruit paste, and just a touch of acid to break down the tougher fibers. "You marinated the apex predator," one of the delegates whispered. It was a statement, not a question, delivered with the kind of numb disbelief usually reserved for natural disasters. "Well, of course I marinated it," Rodriguez replied, as if this was the most obvious thing in the universe. "You don't just throw something this special into the oven without proper preparation. That would be disrespectful." Dr. Foster, who had been taking detailed notes throughout the process, nodded approvingly. The marinade would have helped break down the complex proteins while infusing the meat with complementary flavors. "It's actually quite sophisticated from a biochemical standpoint." "Sophisticated," Krell Knox repeated faintly. "You find the consumption of our apex predator sophisticated?" "Well, the preparation certainly is," Emma replied. "I mean, look at this presentation. The way Rodriguez has arranged the heads, the perfect scoring on the skin, the color gradation in the meat. This is artistry." Captain Martinez, who had been trying to maintain some semblance of diplomatic awareness, finally gave up and joined the crowd around the carving station. "I have to admit, this smells incredible. Rodriguez, you've really outdone yourself." "Thank you, Captain." "Now, if you'll notice the internal temperature," Rodriguez said, sliding a thermometer into the thickest part of the roast, "we're looking at a perfect medium rare. The exterior is fully cooked for safety, but the interior maintains that optimal texture and flavor." He began carving slices with the kind of precision that would have made a surgeon jealous. Each piece was perfectly uniform, showing the beautiful pink interior surrounded by the golden brown exterior. The meat looked so tender it was practically falling apart. "Who wants to try the first slice?" Rodriguez asked, holding up a piece that looked like it belonged in a fine dining restaurant. There was a moment of silence that stretched into eternity. Then Captain Martinez stepped forward. "I'll do the honors." He took the slice, examined it for a moment, then took a bite. The expression on his face was pure bliss. "Oh my God, Rodriguez. This is absolutely incredible." "Really?" Rodriguez beamed with pride. "I was a little worried about the cooking time. These apex predators can be tricky to get just right." "It's perfect," Jake said, taking another bite. "The texture is incredible, the flavor is complex but not overwhelming, and it just melts in your mouth. I've never tasted anything like it." The other crew members quickly joined in, each taking a slice and providing their own running commentary. Murphy declared it the finest meat I've ever eaten, while Lisa compared it favorably to the legendary steaks of New Texas. Even Emma, who usually preferred her food analyzed rather than enjoyed, was making sounds of pure culinary pleasure. "This is a nightmare," whispered one of the Vieltari warriors. "They're not just eating it, they're enjoying it." "They're critiquing it," another added, his scales shifting to what Jake was pretty sure was the color of existential dread. "Like it's a restaurant meal." "Well, it is a restaurant meal," Rodriguez said helpfully. "Or at least it's prepared to restaurant standards. I don't believe in doing anything halfway." Krell Knox, who had been silent for the last several minutes, finally spoke up. "In our culture, the dread beast is considered the ultimate challenge. Our greatest warriors spend years preparing to face just one. Most die in the attempt. Those who succeed become legends." "Legends?" Jake looked up from his plate. "For cooking dinner?" "Nah. It's for killing the apex predator." "Right, but that's just the first step," Rodriguez explained patiently. "The real art is in what comes after. Anyone can kill something. It takes skill to make it taste this good." "Skill?" Krell Knox's voice had gone dangerously quiet. "You consider the consumption of our apex predator a matter of skill?" "Well, yeah," Rodriguez said. "I mean, look at this presentation. The flavor profile. The texture. This doesn't just happen by accident. This is the result of years of training and experience. From across the room, the station's communication system crackled to life. Station control to all delegates. We're receiving urgent evacuation requests from 17 different species. Apparently, word has spread about the dinner preparations. Captain Martinez paused in his eating. Evacuation requests. Sir, the Zephyrian delegation is requesting immediate emergency transport. They say they can't remain in the same sector as beings who, quote, casually consume apex predators while discussing wine pairings. Wine pairings? Jake looked at Murphy. Did you bring the wine? Of course I brought the wine, Murphy replied, producing a bottle. This is a once-in-a-lifetime dining experience. We're not drinking it with water. Rodriguez clapped his hands together. Excellent. Now, who's ready for the second course? The second course was, if anything, even more spectacular than the first. Rodriguez had prepared what he called apex predator medallions with a reduction sauce, accompanied by roasted vegetables that had been cooked in the creature's own juices. The presentation was so elegant it could have graced the cover of a culinary magazine. Now, this is what I call the money shot, Rodriguez announced, drizzling the reduction sauce over the medallions with the flourish of a master chef. The sauce is made from the pan drippings, reduced with some of that Andromedan wine and finished with a touch of butter from Earth. It should complement the natural flavors without overpowering them. Captain Martinez took the first bite and his eyes literally rolled back in his head. Rodriguez, I'm pretty sure this is the best thing I've ever eaten, in my entire life. The texture is unbelievable, Lisa added, cutting another piece. It's like butter, but with this incredible depth of flavor. And that sauce, what did you call it? A reduction? Meh. Classic French technique, adapted for xenobiological cuisine, Rodriguez explained proudly. The key is patience. You have to let the flavors develop slowly, build on each other. You can't rush perfection. Dr. Foster, who had been taking notes throughout the meal, looked up from her tablet. From a purely scientific standpoint, this is remarkable. The protein structure is unlike anything I've seen before. The amino acid profile is incredibly complex, and the mineral content is off the charts. This isn't just delicious, it's probably one of the most nutritious things we could eat. Nutritious? Krell Knox's voice had gone completely flat. You're analyzing the nutritional content of our apex predator? Well, it's important to understand what you're eating, Emma replied matter-of-factly. This creature has clearly evolved in a high-gravity environment with significant mineral deposits. The selenium content alone is remarkable. And the omega fatty acids, Captain, we should seriously consider adding this to our regular diet. Regular diet? The ambassador's scales were now cycling through colors that probably didn't exist in any known spectrum. You want to regularly consume apex predators. If they all taste this good, absolutely, Murphy said, reaching for another medallion. This is incredible. The flavor is so complex, so nuanced. It's like a symphony in your mouth. A symphony, Krell Knox repeated numbly. You're comparing the consumption of our apex predator to music. Well, good food is an art form, Rodriguez said. And this is definitely art. The way the flavors balance, the way the texture complements the taste, the way the aroma enhances the overall experience. This is what we call fine dining. The other crew members were now deep into what could only be described as food criticism. They were discussing flavor profiles, texture contrasts, and aromatic bouquets with the kind of passionate intensity usually reserved for religious debates. The finish is extraordinary, Lisa was saying. It starts with this rich, almost gamey flavor, then transitions to something lighter, more complex. And the way it lingers on the palate. It's the marbling, Emma added. The fat distribution throughout the muscle tissue creates these incredible layers of flavor. Each bite is slightly different, but they all worked together to create this amazing overall experience. Captain Martinez, meanwhile, had noticed that Ambassador Krell Knox was staring at the proceedings with the kind of expression usually seen on the faces of people watching their house burn down. "Ambassador, you okay? You look a little pale." "Well, paler than usual." "Captain Martinez," Krell Knox said slowly, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." "Of course, Ambassador. What's on your mind?" "When you look at the dread beast of Vel-Tar, our apex predator, the ultimate expression of evolutionary perfection, the most feared creature in our sector of the galaxy, what do you see?" Jake looked at the remains of their meal, then back at the ambassador. "Honestly? I see dinner. Really, really good dinner. And when you think about facing other apex predators from other worlds, I think about whether Rodriguez can get his hands on them," Jake replied without hesitation. "I mean, if this is what apex predators taste like, we need to start planning a galactic food tour." The silence that followed was so complete it seemed to have physical weight. Then, slowly, Krell Knox began to laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh that happened when someone's entire understanding of reality had been turned upside down and fed through a blender. "A food tour," he said, still laughing. "You want to tour the galaxy eating apex predators?" "Well, when you put it like that, it sounds amazing," Rodriguez said enthusiastically. "Think about it, Captain. Every world, every species, they all have their own apex predators. Each one probably has a completely different flavor profile, different cooking requirements, different preparation methods. We could write a cookbook." "A cookbook?" Krell Knox whispered. "You want to write a cookbook about consuming apex predators? The ultimate guide to galactic apex predator cuisine," Murphy suggested. "It would be a bestseller." Dr. Foster looked up from her tablet. "From a research standpoint, it would be invaluable. We could learn so much about evolutionary biology, planetary ecosystems, protein structures." "And flavor profiles," Rodriguez added. "Don't forget flavor profiles." Captain Martinez was getting that look in his eyes that usually preceded his most spectacular diplomatic incidents. "You know what, Ambassador? I think we might be onto something here. This could be the foundation for a whole new kind of cultural exchange." "Cultural exchange?" Krell Knox's voice had gone completely beyond normal ranges of sound. "You want to base cultural exchange on eating apex predators?" "Why not?" Jake shrugged. "Food brings people together. And if every species has their own apex predator, we could all share. It's like a potluck, but with more teeth." From the communication system, another announcement crackled to life. Station control to all delegates. "We're now receiving evacuation requests from 43 different species. The Galactic Council is requesting an emergency session to discuss what they're calling the human situation." Rodriguez looked up from his cooking. "The human situation?" "Sir, apparently word has spread that humans not only defeated the Vel-Tari apex predator, but consumed it and requested more. Several species are now offering tribute in the form of their own apex predators." Captain Martinez blinked. "Tribute?" "Yes, sir. Yes. The Zephyrian delegation is offering their storm serpent, the Andromedans are sending their void whale, and the Centaurians are preparing to transport their legendary death lotus. They all want to, quote, honor the apex predators of the galaxy." The crew of the Wanderlust looked at each other. Then, slowly, they began to smile. "Rodriguez," Captain Martinez said, "I think we're going to need a bigger kitchen." 3 weeks later, Captain Jake Martinez found himself sitting in what was once the Galactic Council's main conference room, now hastily converted into the most impressive dining hall in known space. The table stretched for nearly a quarter mile and was laden with the most exotic and supposedly terrifying creatures from across the galaxy. "Pass the storm serpent," he said to Communications Officer Lisa Park, who was sitting across from him looking like she'd won the lottery. And could someone grab me more of that sauce Rodriguez made for the void whale? Which sauce? Chef Rodriguez called from the kitchen area he'd commandeered. The honey-based one or the one with the fermented plutonian fruit? Both, Jake replied. I want to try them together. Dr. Foster, who had been in heaven for the past 3 weeks, looked up from her latest analysis. Captain, you have to try the Death Lotus. The texture is incredible, and the mineral content is unlike anything I've ever seen. Plus, it's actually mildly psychoactive in humans. Nothing dangerous, just a pleasant tingling sensation. Psychoactive apex predators, Engineer Murphy mused, refilling his wine glass. I never thought I'd live to see the day. From the head of the table, Ambassador Krell Knox watched the proceedings with the kind of detached fascination usually reserved for anthropologists studying primitive cultures. Except in this case, the primitive culture was somehow more advanced than everyone else. Captain Martinez, he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had long since given up trying to understand the universe. I have the latest reports from the Galactic Council. Oh good, Jake said, not looking up from his plate. What's the word? 17 more species have submitted formal requests to join what they're calling the Human Apex Predator Exchange Program. The vegan collective is offering their Harmony Beast, despite the fact that it's been their sacred guardian for over 10,000 years. The Harmony Beast. Rodriguez perked up. What's that one like? According to their description, it's a creature of pure energy that feeds on the life force of entire planets and has never been successfully approached by any living being. So, probably low in calories but high in, what would you call it, Emma? Spiritual nutrients? Dr. Foster considered this seriously. Energy-based life forms would have completely different nutritional profiles. We might need to adapt our cooking methods. Maybe some kind of containment field seasoning? I'll start working on it, Rodriguez said, making notes on his tablet. This is going to be a fun challenge. Krell Knox continued his report with the air of someone reading the obituary for galactic civilization. The rigid empire has declared humans to be the most terrifying species in known space and has offered to surrender their entire military in exchange for protection. The Crystalline Confederation has carved statues of the crew of the Wanderlust and placed them in their hall of ultimate predators. And the hive mind of Proxima has begun referring to you as the Devourers of Devourers. Devourers of Devourers, Jake repeated thoughtfully. I kind of like that. Has a nice ring to it. Captain, Lisa said, we're getting another transmission from the Galactic Tourism Board. They want to know if we'd be interested in hosting a show called Cooking with Apex Predators. Apparently it would be broadcast across 17 different star systems. A cooking show. Rodriguez's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. I've always wanted to do a cooking show. The preliminary ratings projections are incredible, Murphy added, reading from his tablet. Apparently, the idea of humans casually preparing and consuming apex predators is both horrifying and fascinating to most species. They can't look away. Dr. Foster nodded thoughtfully. From an anthropological standpoint, it makes perfect sense. Most species define themselves in relation to their apex predators. By casually consuming them, we're essentially declaring ourselves to be above their entire understanding of the natural order. Plus, they taste really good, Jake added, taking another bite of storm serpent. I mean, that's important too. Ambassador Krell Knox had pulled out what appeared to be a very large glass of something that was probably alcoholic. Captain Martinez, I have one final piece of information for you. What's that? The Galactic Council has voted unanimously to grant humanity permanent membership with full voting rights, unlimited territorial expansion privileges, and what they're calling ultimate diplomatic immunity. Ultimate diplomatic immunity? It means you can do whatever you want and no one will stop you because they're too terrified to try. Jake considered this for a moment. That seems like a lot of responsibility. Are they sure about this? Captain, 3 days ago the warrior caste of Andromeda offered to serve as your personal army. Yesterday the Merchant Guild of the Outer Rim sent a cargo ship full of their most precious treasures with a note that simply said, "Please don't eat us." This morning, the Temporal Collective offered to share their time travel technology if you promise to never visit their homeworld during dinner time. Time travel technology? Murphy looked up from his wine. That could be useful. We could go back and try apex predators from extinct species. Extinct apex predators, Rodriguez mused. The ultimate culinary challenge. I wonder what dinosaurs tasted like. Dr. Foster was already pulling up historical data on her tablet. The possibilities are endless. We could sample the evolutionary development of predator species across multiple timelines. It would be the ultimate xenobiological research project. And the ultimate cookbook, Rodriguez added. Apex predators through time, a culinary journey across the ages. Ambassador Krell Knox finished his drink in one gulp. Captain Martinez, I feel compelled to point out that your species has accidentally conquered the galaxy through the simple act of eating dinner. Accidentally? Jake looked genuinely confused. We didn't conquer anything. We just had a really good meal. You casually consumed what we considered to be the ultimate expression of predatory evolution, declared it delicious, and asked for seconds. Then you proceeded to turn the preparation and consumption of apex predators into an art form. Do you have any idea how that looks to the rest of the galaxy? Like we really know our way around a kitchen? Lisa suggested. Like you're the most terrifying species in the known universe, Krell Knox replied flatly. There are species that have been at war for millennia who have declared ceasefires just to avoid attracting your attention. The hive mind of Proxima has started sending you birthday cards. That's sweet of them, Jake said. What do you get for the species that eats apex predators? Apparently more apex predators, Murphy said, checking his messages. We've got 17 more deliveries scheduled for this week alone. The Quantum Collective is sending something called a probability predator that apparently exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Multidimensional cuisine, Rodriguez said dreamily. I've never worked with anything like that before. I wonder if we'll need special equipment. I can probably rig something up, Murphy offered. Maybe a quantum seasoning shaker? Dr. Foster was practically vibrating with excitement. A creature that exists in multiple dimensions would have a completely unique protein structure. The possibilities for research are incredible. And the flavor profile would be unlike anything we've ever experienced, Rodriguez added. Each dimension might taste completely different. Captain Martinez looked around the table at his crew, all of whom were discussing the consumption of multidimensional apex predators with the casual enthusiasm of people planning a weekend barbecue. Then he looked at Ambassador Krell Knox, who was staring at them with the hollow expression of someone whose entire understanding of reality had been fed through a cosmic blender. Ambassador, Jake said gently, I think there might be something we're missing here. What's that, Captain? You keep talking about apex predators like they're these terrifying, ultimate creatures that represent the pinnacle of evolution. Because they are. Right. But here's the thing, Jake said, leaning back in his chair. If we can just eat them, doesn't that make us the apex predators? The silence that followed was so complete it seemed to have its own gravitational field. Even the multidimensional space around them seemed to pause in consideration of this statement. Oh, Dr. Foster said quietly. Oh my. Yeah, Jake continued. I mean, if you think about it, we're basically at the top of the food chain now. Galactically speaking. The apex predators of apex predators, Lisa said, a note of wonder in her voice. The ultimate life form, Murphy added. The masters of the universe, Rodriguez said, then paused, and were really good at cooking. Ambassador Krell Knox set down his glass and looked around the table at the crew of the Wanderlust. You know what the truly terrifying part is? What's that? Jake asked. You're all still completely oblivious to how absolutely horrifying you are. Rodriguez chose that moment to emerge from the kitchen carrying a massive platter. All right, everyone, who's ready for dessert? I've prepared a traditional Earth dish called Apex Predator ice cream using milk from the Crystalline Confederation's Sacred Cow Beast and eggs from the Temporal Collective's Paradox Chicken. Dessert made from apex predators, Krell Knox said faintly. Of course. Why not? Oh, and Captain. Mia. Rodriguez added, I've been thinking about that galactic cooking show idea. What if we called it Dinner with the Apex? We could travel around the galaxy, meeting different species, learning about their cultures, and preparing their most feared creatures for a lovely evening meal. I love it, Jake said, reaching for his dessert. Educational and delicious. The ultimate cultural exchange program, Lisa agreed. We'll need a good tagline, Murphy suggested. Something catchy. Dr. Foster looked up from her notes. How about bringing the galaxy together, one apex predator at a time? Perfect, Jake said, taking a bite of his dessert. You know what? I think we might actually be onto something here. As the crew of the Wanderlust settled into their dessert, discussing plans for their galactic cooking tour with the casual enthusiasm of people who had absolutely no idea they had just become the most feared species in the known universe. Ambassador Krell Knox poured himself another drink and contemplated the strange turns his life had taken. Somewhere in the depths of space, 47 different species were frantically preparing tribute offerings of their most dangerous creatures, hoping to appease the terrifying humans who had somehow managed to conquer the galaxy through the simple act of having dinner. And in the dining hall of the former Galactic Council building, Captain Jake Martinez was asking if anyone wanted to share the last piece of void whale, completely unaware that he had just become the most powerful being in the galaxy. It was, Rodriguez would later write in his cookbook, the perfect ending to a perfect meal.